Okay, for this example of masking, I'm going to be using the channels panel to mask my image with another image. So what I have before you is the finished product. I have a photograph, black and white photograph of Louis Armstrong, and I have some text. And I also have a color fill. It's a gradient. It's a full layer of a color fill and a gradient layer. What has happened in this image is that the Louis Armstrong photograph was black and white. I have used another image of crumpled up, high textured paper with a little bit of spilt paint on it, if you will, in this area, as a channel mask to make a selection and create a mask on the Louis Armstrong image so that part of the image is worn away with the dark areas of the texture, the paint, the crumpled lines. And I've used that same texture mask or that technique on the layer that the text is on. So I'm going to tab back in to my panels and show you what the layers panels look like. So this is my layers panel. I've got my typography signified by the T, the layer mask. If I press option and I show you what the mask looks like, you can see that we have that textured piece of paper being used as a mask, and the black areas of the mask that I'm revealing are showing up as black. So that texture is not being used. There's no text in that area. The text is residing right about here on the lower left side. So if I turn that mask back off and show you the image of the text is here. It's a rust colored type and it has the mask on it. So you can see if I turn the mask off, by pressing shift on the mask, you'll see that the text is now rust colored. If I turn off the blend mode and put it back to normal, you'll see that the text has been typed. It looks like it's typed right on top of the layer. So what I wanted to do was integrate that text with the bottom layer, with the layers below, with the photograph, with the color fill and the gradient fill. So I've added multiply. I also wanted the text to look as though it was rumpled up as well. So it might have been printed on that same paper stock, crumpled up slightly, shoved into a basement cardboard box, some paint dripped on it, and now it's aged. So I'm going to turn that mask back on and show you what happens when a mask is used. And I can also Command I to invert the mask, and you can see the mask is now inverted, so it even looks more worn out. Command I brings the mask back in. So I'll turn that off for a second and show you the layers when the color fill and the gradient are off. So all that is revealed is layer 0. It's the Louis Armstrong photograph. I'm going to press option on the mask and you can see that my textured piece of paper is being used as a mask. This would be difficult to do by hand with brush strokes, with brushing on a mask. You can see it looks very cool. It's making most of the Louis Armstrong image disappear because it is not full-on white, it is shades of gray. Inside some of the lines that are the wear and tear of the paper, that's pure white. Tiny, tiny bits of pure black are in this image. There are shades of gray all the way through this textured paper. So when it is used as a mask and a layer has been created below it, it reveals some of the layer below. And you can see my color fill layer has color burn attached to it and its opacity is at 46%. So I'll put this back up to 100, take the color burn off, just make it normal. Now you can see that the photograph is integrated with that another rust colored background So it's almost as though the paper stock has a bit of tone to it. This photograph was printed on some kind of textured paper, and the regular wear and tear of years and years of misuse are showing up in the photograph. Whereas the photograph would look like this with the mask off. It's just a really simple photo that could look as though it was printed on, you know, regular photo paper. Now, how did I do this? I used an image as a mask, and I used the image as a mask through going into the channels panel and pasting a textured piece of paper, a scan of a textured piece of paper or a digital image into a new channel. Now, what are the channels? The channels, I will move over and open up the channels to reveal them. The channels for this image, if we are looking at the photo, and I will turn off this mask, the channels that we are seeing in a regular RGB or CMYK image are the RGB composite, the red, the green, and the blue. This image is an RGB image, even though the layer or the photo is in grayscale. I am looking at the photograph and it's composite RGB. When I click down to the mask that I have made, you can see that it is the piece of paper. So this, when I'm looking at it, is the channel thumbnail. It's dirty paper and I've used it twice in this image, okay? The channels panel is where Photoshop stores masking information. So if you've ever used a adjustment layer, so I'll go back, click on my layer 0 and just add an adjustment layer, and you can watch what goes on in the channels panel. So I'm going to add like a levels adjustment. Okay. So the levels adjustment, you can see the level 1 mask shows up. It's not being used. Okay. It's completely white. It has created a new level 1 mask in the channels panel, and it's showing what it looks like in the levels adjustment layer. If I paint on this mask like I would want to do, if I wanted to maybe only use the mask on some areas of this black and white photograph, so the levels adjustment, painting on the mask, if I start painting in, you can see the paint stroke is showing up on the mask. If I click on the properties for that levels adjustment, you will see that I am not using that. I'll click out. I am not using that levels adjustment where that black stroke was painted. So cool. Tab back in and it shows you that that levels 1 mask is saved inside the channels panel. Okay, so now it gets a little complicated when you're trying to use, instead of brush strokes on your masks, you're trying to use an image. So what do I need to do to create an image mask or an image channel and have that channel mask be selected or loaded as a selection? So I'm going to pop that channels panel up a little bit higher. This is the Load Channel as Selection button. Okay, so first thing you need to do, you need an image. So I'm going to go and navigate to my image file. I'm going to go and File, Open, and I'm going to grab a grungy piece of paper. Let's see, what do I have here? Just some dirty paper. I'm going to open up and allow you to see. So this is my dirty piece of paper. It's a bunch of scuff marks. I have it open in a separate Photoshop window. I'm going to select all by pressing Command A, or if you're on a PC, Control A. Command C or Control C to copy. Now I'm going back to my image that I want to use this mask on, and let's see, maybe I am going to replace the mask that I have used on the Louis Armstrong, just to show you exactly how I did this. So I'm going to grab the mask that I have and I'm going to drop it in the trash. Okay. So I'm just going to simply delete it, not apply it. So delete it. So you can see that there is no mask. There is no mask associated with layer 0 right now. I am going to go to the channels panel, and remember I have that dirty, scratchy piece of paper on my clipboard. What I want to do first is to create a new channel. So I click on the create a new channel icon. It turns off all of my RGB and my other channels that I have already created. It creates a new alpha channel and it's 100% black. When I press Command V, it pastes that paper into alpha channel 1, and I'm going to Command minus a little bit and show you how big that piece of paper is. Well, not much larger, but it's a little bit larger than the image itself. So I can, with my selection tool, so I've just pressed V, and you can see I can move this around. So if there's part of this texture that I would like to rotate, make bigger, smaller, I can move the mask image around or go to Command T and get those handles and make that object a little smaller or larger as long as I press return after and then deselect Command D. Now I have truly that image in a new alpha channel or a channel mask. I'm going to tab back in and you can see that alpha is called number 1, so it's an alpha channel. It is in my channels panel. The next thing I need to do is turn it into a selection or load it as a selection. So I simply go down to the load channel as selection, click. It loads the channel as the selection. You can see that there's a really complicated selection happening. That's all I need out of the alpha channel or that alpha layer. I can turn my RGB back on, turn the alpha off, navigate over to my layers panel, and simply click on the add layer mask, and it has added the crazy paper, and I'll zoom in on this, as that alpha mask, or that alpha channel, or that masking. And that is the mask. I'll turn it on. So I'm pressing Option. That is the mask that has been used on the image. So I'm pressing Option to click back out. Channels, fine. They are being used, but we're not seeing them in the channels panel. What we're looking at is the RGB composite of the image, and the mask is being used. The mask information is being saved inside of the channels panel, but it is visualized in the image accompanying the mask, or the mask that accompanies the image. So I'll close that channels panel up. I'll just pop it back into place, close the properties back up, and just move this to the side and zoom out slightly. Okay, so it works exactly like a regular mask works. If I press Command I, it inverts the mask. That's kind of cool too. It looks like there was a pane of glass on top of the image and I painted on it and then tried to scrub some of the paint away. So that's Command I. I'm going to press Shift, turn it off and on. I press Option to reveal it, and you can see that I can paint on this mask as well. So I can use a black or white paintbrush, and I'm going to go back and show you that that mask works exactly like any other mask, using any kind of paintbrush, any kind of sponge brush, a brush that looks like a leaf, a brush that I create myself, etc. As long as I remember that when I'm painting on a mask, I need to be aware of the opacity, of the hardness of the edge of the brush, whether I have my black or white foreground, background colors selected. That is how masking works. So, ta-da! I'll go back one step because I actually don't like that big splotch. So I'm going to use my history panel and move back one step and just show you. Here we go. And it's the same process that I worked with when I brought in the text. So I typed the type onto a text layer. So as soon as you click on the type tool, a new text layer is going to be produced by Photoshop, you click and type, you select the text, you change the type to the font that you'd like to use and the size that you'd like to use, etc. And then going into the channels panel, create a new alpha, paste in your texture, load the texture as a selection or load the alpha as a selection, and then turn on the RGB and off the alpha, navigate to the layer that you'd like to use the mask on. That selection is going to become the mask. Create a mask and voila, you will have a mask that looks like any kind of digital image. So this could be used with, or this process could be used with brocade wallpaper, with some scanned paper or scanned texture, maybe fabric, maybe another image. It's completely creatively up to you what you use as the mask. Sometimes you'd like your images to look like they were printed in the real world, and sometimes this is a great way of bringing in some painterly strokes, etc. to your work. In any case, that is it. That is using the channels panel to create your layer masks or adjustment layer masks.